My mother had just come back from outside when she immediately sensed that something about me was off. In broad daylight, I felt unbearably hot all over and insisted I had to take a shower to feel better. On the surface, my mother stayed calm, but deep down, she was already suspicious. When my father came downstairs, I became even more uneasy. The truth was, I had tried to sneak out the night before. What was eerie was that both my parents were still awake at midnight and stopped me on the spot. That was the moment I truly realized there was something seriously wrong with the parents standing in front of me. I made an excuse, saying I couldn't sleep and wanted to go for a walk. How could they not have noticed the changes in me these past few days? They decided they had to speed up their plan. The next day at school, I couldn't focus at all. Mark thought I was still grieving Jiho, who had passed away, and told me the dead could never come back. But suddenly, I made a bold decision. I remembered how, when I was little, my father had sternly warned me that no matter what happened, I was never allowed to enter that room. Back then, all I knew was to apologize and promise I'd never go near it again. That was also the first time I had ever seen such a terrifying expression on my father's face. While my mother went to the supermarket, I immediately ran home. That room might be the source of my parents' strange mood swings. Mark didn't understand why I asked him to help watch the door. I told him I'd explain later, so he reluctantly agreed. Just as I was about to make my move, my mother suddenly called. She said she'd be half an hour late picking me up from school. When I told her I was already home, her tone noticeably darkened. Pretending to look for my keys, I told her I felt weak and came back early. My mother put on a concerned tone and said she'd be home in half an hour. After hanging up, I raced against the clock to find the key, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find it. With no choice, I asked Mark to hold the ladder steady. Today, I was determined to get into that room, but before I could climb in, my father came home early. I quickly told Mark to move the ladder and stall my father. Seeing me still struggling to climb through the window, Mark had no choice but to lie, saying he wanted my father's advice on a competition project. My father looked confused. Mark then awkwardly broke into a strange dance, silently praying that I'd hurry up and get inside. At the worst possible moment, my mother came home too. Mark had to deal with both of them at once. In the end, he pulled out his final trick, pretending to feel unwell. Only after confirming I had entered the room did he finally breathe a sigh of relief. The room was furnished in an unusually old-fashioned way, but the toys clearly proved that a child had once lived there. When my mother saw that Mark was fine, she immediately went inside to look for me. When she realized I wasn't in my bedroom, her face instantly sank. With just one look from her, my father immediately thought of that room. He pulled out the key he carried with him and was about to open the door when he heard me walking out of the bathroom. I forced myself to stay calm, though inside I was panicking. To my surprise, my father was even calmer than I was. He told me to shower less if I wasn't feeling well, and reminded me to take my medicine. I lied and said I'd already taken it, then added that it made me sleepy, and I wanted to rest. My parents' expressions didn't change, but the moment I turned away, they exchanged a knowing look. My mother immediately went to check the bathroom. Seeing water droplets still on the glass, she finally relaxed a little, but my clothes hadn't been changed at all. At the same time, my father pulled open the curtain in that room and, as expected, noticed signs that the window had been disturbed. Anger surged instantly. Then I saw my father's face turn dark with rage. Although my mother was cooking, hearing my father's agitation made her sense something was wrong. I cried and asked my father what he was hiding from me. I told them I was afraid of them. Pushed to the edge, my father blurted out that I was the one they found terrifying. I couldn't understand. Clenching his teeth, my father seemed ready to say more, but my mother cut him off. Only then did he regain a bit of control. Now I was more confused than ever, not knowing that I had already crossed my parents' bottom line and set something irreversible into motion.